Ever since I got a gravel bike, I've become a bit obsessed with where I'm actually allowed to ride it. When I was riding my road bike, it was quite simple. A highway's got two parts. It's got the carriageway, where all carriages including bikes go, and it's got a footway, which is reserved for pedestrians. Except of course it's a bit more complicated than that, because some highways you're banned from cycling, like motorways and the approaches to tunnels, but also some footways are shared use. They're designated to be allowed for pedestrians and cyclists. But there's another complication, because when the government brought in about 25 years ago, brought in fixed penalty notices, so fines for people cycling on the pavement, the guidance to the police said that they should not be given to somebody cycling considerately on the pavement to avoid heavy traffic, or to children or young people. Now, if you think about it, that's a loophole a mile wide in the law. You know, how is the public meant to interpret that? Does it mean that if there's no safe cycle path on a very busy road, you're allowed to use a footpath? Well, strictly speaking, no, because it's illegal, but it does suggest that the police shouldn't give you a ticket. When we get onto gravel tracks, it gets even more complicated. So, public right-of-way, the classic right-of-way for a cyclist and horses and pedestrians across public land. This sign should have a bike on it as well, because bikes have been able to use all public bridleways since, I think, 1968, provided they give way to horse riders and pedestrians. However, most of what I've been riding along today, legally, footpaths. Footpaths are accessible only to people on foot. So why am I riding on them? Well, this is a legal footpath, but a permissive cycleway. This means while I don't have a legal right to cycle here, I have permission to cycle here. The signpost behind me says cycle route straight ahead, which I'm going to take, but on the OS map it says the permissive cycle path goes off to the left, and there is no right of way straight ahead according to this map. No path, no nothing. Nothing's marked at all. So something I've learned while researching this is that the OS map is not legally binding. Definitive map of rights of way is held by each local authority. However, I looked up the definitive map held by Gateshead Council, which I'm in a minute, and they have nothing marked straight ahead here, and yet there's a nice blue Sustrans sign telling me to go straight ahead. The golf course really gets to my goat. It's a bridle way through there, and people using the right of way do not have to cede way to golfers. In fact, in the law, it's up to the golfers to make sure that the way ahead is safe and clear before they play their ball. All this rights of way stuff needn't be so complicated, because in 1947 a bill went through the House of Commons that would have opened up all uncultivated land to public access. Unfortunately, it got booted out by the House of Lords. You know why? You have to ask yourselves, why would a bunch of unelected landowners boot out an open access law? And it was only in 2000 that 8% of the country was opened up by the Right to Roam Act. But it specifically says it's for walkers only. It's not for cyclists, not for camping. So if you're a bikepacker, tough. In 2003, when the Scottish government passed a law that opened up all uncultivated land to walking, cycling, camping, as long as you followed an open access code. The open access is fine for Scotland. Why not England and Wales? If you're interested in this sort of thing, I really recommend the Book of Trespass by Nick Hayes. It's a really rollicking read and fascinating about the history of land access and some of the rights and wrongs of it too. This is one of my favourite bridleways. Strangely enough, you're on the other side of the river to my right. It's all footpath, whereas this side has a whole network of bridleways. And something nobody's ever been able to answer the question to me is, why are some footpaths and some bridleways? One thing I've discovered is that many footpaths probably are technically bridleways, because if a right-of-way is marked as a footpath on a definitive map, that's a minimum level of access, not a maximum. So the footpath marking does not mean you can't ride on it. It just means you might be trespassing if you do. This track is a different type of right-of-way called a byway, open to all traffic, or boat. Now the problem with boats is that 4x4 drivers like getting stuck in them, which renders them useless for other users. And I know I'm grumbling on this video about cyclists not being given enough access, but where we get access we don't really cause damage. Certainly not so much to render them unusable by other users. Now this is officially a footpath, and the question is, why is it not a bridleway? You know, why on earth, if I've got the right to use it on foot, can I not ride a bike? However, it is marked in a local guide to off-road cycling as a permissive cycleway, so if it's good enough for Ted Little, it's good enough for me. But being a permissive cycleway is not the only way a footpath can effectively become a bridleway. If it is used for 20 years without the landowner either trying to stop people using it, like with a fence or signs, or giving permission to use it, strangely enough, then it becomes a bridleway. And for that reason, an awful lot of footpaths are probably bridleways. But the weird thing about that law is it kind of encourages you to trespass, because how are you going to get 20 years of use on a bike without, on a footpath, without trespassing? So it's another one of those areas where the law is highly contradictory. Now this is an odd little one, because on the OS map it is marked as other public access at one scale, and at the other it's marked as a public highway. And again, another grey area is what are called unclassified country roads, and sometimes unsurfaced unclassified country roads. And I've since realised that a lot of tracks that I thought were out of bounds legally turn out to be nothing of the sort, turn out to be public highways. This is the only place on this ride where I know of a right of way that says no cycling on it. The weird thing about this is I'm perfectly entitled to walk in here, but if I get on my bike, I will be trespassing. In fact, some people would say that by walking my bike in here, I'm trespassing. Some lawyers claim because you don't need a bike to walk. Now, if I did ride, then trespassing is a civil offence. If the landowner asks you to leave, you leave, or they can use force to evict you. But it's all a bit daft that this wonderful gravel track I can walk along but not cycle. But as it says no cycling, I tend to respect signage like that. I'm not that much of a rebel. This track we've been on is a fourth type of public right-of-way, a restricted byway, which means walkers, cyclists, horses and horse-drawn wagons, but no motorised vehicles. However, I would love to see the wagon get over that. Right, this is another one of those signs that annoys me, because this is a right of way, you don't have to give way to farm traffic and livestock. Of course, most of the time you would want to, but it's up to you. Be courteous, don't be bullied.
What's my conclusion on all this? Well, I realised that by restricting myself to bridle ways, byways and boats, I was doing myself out of a lot of the access that is available, because there's an awful lot more tracks that are legally available. They just mightn't be obvious on a map. So those are the bare minimum, and I think it's perfectly reasonable, given how restricted access to the countryside is, to push up against the boundaries of those limits and test them. Because at the end of the day, if you get it wrong, if somebody says, oi, you're trespassing, then all you have to do legally is leave the land. You're not going to get in any more trouble than that. So that's my conclusion. I no longer ask permission. I try first, let people ask questions later. What do you think? Put your opinions below the video.